Hi everyone, Nigel Saunders here. It is a peaceful Wednesday morning. I'm getting my Larch Bonsai forest ready for this weekend's show in Kitchener, Waterloo. So it'll be very exciting going to the show. So I'm starting by just picking up all the dead needles that are on the forest floor that have fallen down over the summer. This dark area out front here had a layer of sand on it, and it's turned dark, and the next step is it'll start growing moss in that area. So I want to keep the sand there, so I'm going to have to kind of peel off the top layer. If I do that, you can see the sand color underneath. The top layer is just a layer that will eventually form moss. So I can just kind of peel that whole upper layer off like that. So I'll get right up to the shore with the rocks here. I find it's always important to have space around your forest. You don't want, your forest crowded into a small pot. You need a bit of landscape, an extension of the landscape coming out from the forest, and it looks just right. It doesn't look crammed in there. It's another point of visual interest. So I've got a few roots sticking up here too that I need trimming back. You'll notice that there's a lot of moss in here that dried up over the summer. We had a really hot, dry summer. So I'm going to be picking that out and replacing it with better looking moss. So right here you can see all this dried up moss. You can just pick it out. Any patches that are kind of, not so good looking, just pick them out. Replace it with a fresh patch of moss. There's also moss around the base of the trunks of the tree here I'm going to pick away. So right here you can see all the moss growing up the trunk line. I want to be able to see the surface roots a bit too. There's no point having nice radial surface roots if you can't see them. Helps add a look of maturity to the trees when you have nice surface roots. So it is supposed to rain all day today, and it's been drizzling this morning a little bit, but so far it hasn't been too bad. I'm able to work outdoors, which is nice. I'm taking away some of this dead moss here, these pieces sticking up. So I'm also clearing a visual path to the base of this tree. So I didn't want moss growing up high in front of it, otherwise it obscures the root base. So you want to kind of have some sight lines so you can see the base of each tree if you can. So this tree here, you can see I've cleared around the base of the tree before, clearing the moss away, but it doesn't have the sight line from the front. It's built up too thick, the moss here, so I'm going to peel that away. Quite a clump of moss. Now it's got liverwort in it, so I won't save that clump. You can see there's little bits of liverwort mixed in with the moss, so that just gets chucked. And I'll go moss collecting today, find some nice fine moss. I noticed the sidewalk of plenty out front is growing moss once again. Now that we've had cooler weather and it's been rainy and damp. This rock here is kind of totally obscured with moss. It's a beautiful stone. So I'm going to peel away some of the moss away from it, so you can see a bit of that nice stone. Again, it's like the roots of your tree. There's no point having beautiful roots on your tree if you can't see them. And same with the stones. You don't want them totally obscured with moss. And as I've said before, getting a tree ready for a show takes a long time. You really got to nitpick all the details. Make sure everything is, as nice as you can make it. And it takes a long time. Like hours and hours, especially in a forest like this. There's the landscape, there's the trees. You know, the whole purpose of the show for the bonsai grower is to make your tree look the best it can at that particular point in time. It's almost like a challenge to make it look better than it should. You can see now in this area how, you know, the sand, the moss, and the rocks, they're all a little more defined, and it's looking better. Still a lot of work to go on it, but definitely making progress. Now my moss bushes at the back here, you'll notice they're not looking very good. They got attacked by squirrels several times this year, knocked totally off. I replanted them, they started growing again, they got knocked off again. They're still there, but they certainly don't look as good as they did. So this is a waterfall through the middle here, a dry waterfall. So I don't want moss growing in my waterfall area where the water's supposed to be. Yeah, so I may have to replace my moss balls, bushes, with fresh moss. They're just looking pretty tired. I also, because the summer was so hot, I kept the back of the planting towards the sun. So this was kind of shaded out the front. And it kept the moss looking much better. If I had it turned around, all this moss would be brown. Browner than it is. So my next trunk here, you can see this one covered in moss. It looks nice, but again, I've got to peel it back. It'll hold moisture against the trunk and it'll rot out the outer layer of bark. So now you can see the base of the tree. I think that looks better than the moss. So I think, yeah, I've got a lot of moss here. I'm going to take away this clump, like that, and I'll replace it with something else, either, you know, sand, a different kind of ground cover. Maybe here too, this one's a little too much. Yeah, so some shorter moss planted around the base of this tree would look really good, or sand or something. Something that looks a little different than the moss that's here already. Bit of variety. Now in the past I had kind of a pathway going up around the trees here, which I may do. I may try to find some pathways. They always look good. I'm going to try, see all the brown ends on this moss here? I'm going to try pruning them away and leaving the green moss underneath. Because it's a nice clump of moss. Well, that looks much better. Anytime you have an opportunity, like, see this clump of moss out front here? It's very, you know, thick. I have an opportunity to divide it into smaller sections, and I'll do that. So I've got kind of a rounded clump here, so I'll pick out a section out of the middle here. And it'll make it look more miniature. So then I'll kind of prune this to a rounded shape. Like that. So now instead of looking like a big blob, it looks like a little miniature bush. I'll fill in, you know, around it with some either flatter moss or, you know, finer moss, or sand or something like that. I'm going to prune this away from the edge of the pot. Don't want anything overhanging the lip. And then here again, I kind of got a big blob of moss. I don't want it that big, so I think this is the nicest part. So I'm going to prune away this part and just get rid of it. So that exposes that nice rock texture there. Prune this one a little more rounded. And then you can see it just grows into this, so I want to separate this one too. Because you got to keep them separated. And it's a subtle effect, but it really, just pruning it down in size here a bit, it really adds to your bonsai. Gives it a nice miniature look. And there. So I've gone from a big blob of moss to two miniature looking bushes, which looks much, much more miniature and to scale. So again, up here, you know, that one I was pruning earlier, it needs a bit of definition. So I'm going to remove piece from the middle here. So you can see there's a little more definition there now. I'm just going to prune it a little more. I like the trailing moss down here, but I'm going to give it a little more definition up top. There. So now you can see it's a rounded bush. It looks much more miniature. You can see more of the rocks. Now if you look at a forest floor, they're usually not all moss and ground cover. There's usually a lot of spots of leaves falling down and just areas that aren't green. And I think that's important in your forest, is to not have the whole forest floor all green. I think you want some variety and interest. So you can see that bush needs a bit of definition there. So it's just kind of one with the rest of the landscape. So I'll again get rid of some of the moss around it. And it'll go from looking like a blob to a little miniature bush and part of the landscape. Now it's really starting to rain now. Well, it is full on raining outside now, but I've got my sand. I'm going to put it around here. See what it looks like. If it looks too much of a contrast, I can always plant some moss there, some very fine moss. Yeah, I think that's going to take away from the stream, so I need some moss. It's just too much of a contrast. So I can leave the sand there. Sand or moss grows really nicely on top of sand. So I'll leave the sand there, and then I'll get some fine moss and plant that on top. But I've got to get in out of the rain. As soon as the rain stops, I'll be back at the larch forest, getting it ready for the show. The rain has stopped, at least for now, so I can get back to work. So I left off at this area. I tried the sand here, and it overpowers. Your eye goes to this. It should be going to this dry stream bed. So that'll probably be where I put my sand. And I'll have to find some fine moss to put in this area here. I collected some nice moss from the cracks in the front sidewalk in front of the house. Yeah, really nice and thin. So I'll wash the soil off the back of them. I'm just letting them soak for a bit, and then I can plant it in my larch forest. All right, I'm ready to plant now. So I'll put a patch. I'll divide it into two. Kind of make clumps, I think. Push it down nice and firmly. Yeah, that provides a nice contrast to the existing moss. It's kind of a different texture, a little bit different color. I think that goes really well. Yeah, I like that. That looks very, very lush. So let's put some around the base of this tree now. All right, so I'll plant it beside the root here. And I'll put some up here. I'm kind of flattening the moss out, but you'll find in the next couple of days it'll recover and start growing upright. It won't look like it was squished, which it kind of looks like now. Okay, so I think I should tackle the stream bed next. So the whole idea is to look like a dry stream bed here. So I've got some coarse gravel in here, almost aquarium gravel, and I don't like it. It looks too rough and coarse. So I think I need to mix some of the sand in there to bring that out. So I'll start by picking out some of the moss that's up top, some of the needles and that, just clean it up, and then I'll apply the sand. So the waterfall has to be in steps, so it's like horizontal steps, goes down, another horizontal step. That's how they seem to, be in nature. They're not like a smooth ramp or anything. It's always stepped over rocks and debris that's fallen in the waterfall, like sticks and stuff or logs. So that's the kind of look I want. It's kind of a stepped terrain here. So I think I've got to add the sand now. So let's do that. I have a tray of it here that I can add a little bit at a time. And I'll water this after to settle the sand in. Put some up top here. That'll help it look more natural too. Okay, so now I'm going to water it, and it should make all the sand settle in. All right, here I go with the water. You can see it flowing downhill. And I think that looks pretty good. Here's a look at the waterfall now. So you can see it's just enough of a difference in color that it stands out a little bit. Looks very, very natural. You can almost imagine the water running down. Yeah, very nice. I like that. I'm going to continue planting my finer moss around. So I'll put some in the cracks here. And some right here. Now, if I could find even more varieties of moss, it would look even better, but there's not a lot of varieties around. I've been looking, but it's hard to find, you know, different kinds of moss. And then I've got to create a shoreline here, so I'll start planting some moss here, and this will be my shoreline. I will have to prune away that one root sticking up. That's gone. Okay. Start putting some more moss here. You can see this looks like kind of a natural runoff area. I think I'll keep it like that. So I think I'll put some sand in there. I think that'll look good. Try it anyway. Sort of like another little stream kind of running into the main body of water here. I'm also very low on sand in this area, so I've got to build it up some more. And when I water this, it'll all even out. A little more sand in there. Okay, I'll give that a watering too. All right, here I go with the water. Settle that sand layer in, and that should do it. Here's a look at that area now. So I think it looks really, really nice. I think in future I may raise the larch trees here and here just a bit. Get them up a little higher. I think that would look better. Sort of like they're on the hill instead of kind of planted at the level of the pot. So I think that would improve the planting to get those front two trees lifted a bit. But yeah, you can see how, you know, you have that contrast between the sand and the lush moss, and it looks really, really good. I'm stepping back now, having a look at the overall composition. I'm really liking the right-hand side here. I think it looks really, really good. I think on this side, I'm a little too lush. I think it's too green. I think I need more rocks exposed on that side. And it's looking a little heavy. Maybe, you know, taking it so it's more of a step going up the hill rather than a slope. I think that would look much better. I've still got to fix up all the moss bushes at the back. So there's still some work to go. But I think overall, it's looking pretty good. I think at the front here, I'm too much moss. It's just a big green blob there. I've got to separate that into smaller pieces. Yeah. So some improvement to go. But, you know, I really like what's happening so far. I found a couple of rocks. I'm just trying them out. I'm trying to make sort of a cliff edge. I have this rock here, rock up here, and I think it needs a couple here. And then I think I need something in this area. Maybe a bit of sand. I think so. A bit of sand. All right, I'm going to try a little sand in this area. And I always put way too much on, and then when you give it a watering, it kind of all washes into the cracks. It looks very, very natural. I think you could do that for, you know, every bonsai. You could put the sand on and wash it away. So here I go with the water now. I think that looks good. You can see the sand has settled into the areas. It's kind of tied this whole area together with the sand layer. I'm just picking out some of the little bits of stone. Yeah, I think that looks very natural. It looks like it's been there for 100 years. I'm going to rotate the planting now and start working on this side here. You can see, again, there's a lot of moss that's died back. There's a few weeds in here, that Scotch moss. Get that out of there. My liverwort, I think I've got it all removed now. Next, I'm going to, see all this moss here? It'll come back. You can see the green starting underneath. But I don't have time. I've got to get this looking good for the show, so I'm going to strip it off. So just like this, and I'll replace it. Even though this is at the back of the planting, you can still see it a bit from the front. So here's a look at the back now. You can see there's a root sticking out here. There's my start of my waterfall up here. The moss on this side is a little better. There's my moss bush that the squirrels kept breaking off. I'm going to get rid of it. There's what's left of it. You can see it's, you know, the birds kept picking at it. This is about 6 or 7 years old, this moss bush, but the other one's up here. It just doesn't look good anymore. It's kind of, you know, it's starting to recover, but maybe I'll leave this one in place. See if we can restore that one, but this one's just too far gone, so it is gone. This is going to use a lot of moss. I probably should find some coarser moss and save the fine moss for, you know, up front, my finishing details. So I'll probably have to go out and collect some more moss. I went out moss collecting, and I got really lucky. I found a building that had a whole pile of moss on top of the pavement. So you can see nice kind of fine moss, not too thick a layer. So I'll get it all soaking in the water here. It was actually, even though it's raining today, the moss was quite dry because it was kind of under the overhang of the edge of the building's roof. This was an old factory. So I just rode my bike, and you just ride around until you find some good moss. All right, I'll get all my moss watered. Just to pre-soak it all. Do my planting and watering too. There we go. I can just kind of put this on as one piece almost. And again, because it's at the back, you don't really need to do all the detail work. So that's looking pretty good, this side. I've still got to do some work over here though. So I kind of finished about here. That moss, it's not so good. I'll leave it though. It seems to be holding the hill together. I'll just pull off all this moss back here and kind of replant it. So I think that's looking pretty good. There's some variation. It's not all boring. This side's a little boring, but you know, again, it's at the back. So I'm kind of defining a path here in the forest now. you don't have to have a path, but it sure is inviting when you see places that you could walk, like steps. And I think it takes you into the scene. So that's what I'm doing now, is I'm kind of creating a subtle pathway. Not one that's obvious, but one that looks inviting. And here you can see the steps here. And I think I haven't done anything about this face here. It still needs moss on it, so I better get some moss on there. And I will use the fine moss for this area as a contrast to the coarser stuff above. So I'll put this in here. Like that. Another piece here. It's looking good. And then I still have an area here without any moss or anything. So I think I need this piece here. One of the pieces I just collected. I think it can go where? Break it apart. Right there. Pushing it in. So this moss has, a bit of a backing to it. There's a bit of a soil layer, so it kind of sticks well to vertical surfaces. Let's have a look from the front again. Here it is from the front, so it looks better seeing that. I think I need some sand in these cracks. I think the rest is looking fine. There's something funny going on up here, kind of the top of my hill. There's a lot of thick moss. I think it needs a bit of definition up there. So here I go with some more sand in this area. Yeah, you just put it on thick. Like that. And the water does all the magic. The sand goes where it naturally should be. So I'm putting it behind the tree there. I'll want some on the pathway back here. I think that's enough. I'll give it a water now. All right, here I go with the water. Just kind of wash it down. And it'll just go where it wants to go. Just like that. Oh, that looks nice. I really like that. Here is a look at that area with the sand. It just brings kind of a natural look to it. So it's not just all moss. It kind of, just makes it look more realistic. It's really cool. I think that area is looking good other than a bit of cleanup. Now, I was going to do something with the apex here. You can see I've got a stone here. The moss is kind of growing up all around it. I've got some dead tufts of moss sticking up where my moss bush was. So I think just a little cleanup in this area, just to kind of get a bit of definition. Because it is at the top of the hill, and your eye kind of naturally follows the stream up there. I'm wondering if I need this rock here. I think it looks better without it. I'm going to take that rock out. That looks good as a plateau to the hill. I'll get rid of this little moss bush there and plant this right here. Yeah, that's better. I think too, over on this side, it's too monotonous. I have the same kind of moss, so I've kind of got a clump here. So I'm going to dig this one out and replace it with some finer moss. There is a seed in here that is growing. Let's see if I can pull that. There it is. It looks like popcorn or corn. It's like a corn seedling. It is corn. So I think a bird has probably planted that there, or a squirrel or something. I'll get rid of that. So I was taking out this clump of moss here. And I'm going to replace it with a finer one. So here's a nice fine clump here I can put in there. Just to break it up so it's not all the same kind of moss up top here. I've got sand kind of spread around everywhere. So what isn't moss? It'll be sand. And it'll look really good. Okay, that's enough. I am going to water the whole planting now. A final rinse down, and we'll have a look and see how it all looks. All right, here I go. Washing all this sand into the landscape, giving a really nice, realistic kind of finish to the forest floor. Okay, I have finished the work on my larch forest. Let's go in and have a look at it. I've got my larch forest looking really nice, but that's not all. I've got to get a stand underneath it and an accent plant for the show. So I'll do that next. In the Toronto show, I had my oak stand underneath my cedar forest, but I wanted to use the oak stand for the larch forest. So I'll have to use that other stand that Matt fixed up, the dark one for the cedar forest, and this will now become the stand for the larch forest. Hopefully, let's try it out. Last time I liked the larch forest on the oak stand, so I'll try it out. It may look different now with all the moss and the rocks in the terrain and the fall colors. Let's have a look. Here's a look at the larch forest on the oak stand, and I think it looks even better now with the fall colors on the larch. The color of the needles, the fall needles, matches the oak stand really nicely. So you have the light colored stand, the dark pot, and then the light colored trees. I think it's pretty good. It's a nice combination. Yeah, I'm very happy with that. Now, as far as an accent plant, that's going to be tricky. So for the accent plant, you want something that kind of complements the trees. So either something seasonal, something kind of in scale with the trees. You don't want a big coarse accent plant and then the finely detailed trees. You want something that's sort of the same scale. So I'll look around and see what I have. I looked around all the benches to find an accent plant, something with maybe some fall colors, something low. I've got nothing. I just have nothing. I've really got to step up my accent plant game. I would like something to go with here. So the only thing I can think of is a stone, maybe a small tray with a stone planted in it, a stone that matches these stones in this planting. So I've got my workspace cleared off here, so I was looking around. I want a pot that kind of matches the mica pot here. So I've got two possibilities. The one that Kevin made, and I have an Eldon leaf pot here too. That's a nice color. However, they don't really suit a stone at all. That's the trouble. I mean, I've got lots of stones here. I would need sort of a vertical stone, maybe something like this. Would that look okay? Nah, I don't think so. It's starting to rain. I don't think it adds anything to the planting that. It needs a bit of greenery there. I'm trying to see if I have any other pots. I have sort of a reddish landscape pot here. I'll try the color. I have another little brown one here. Maybe that'll go. Let's try these out. Get all the leaves out. So there's the little one. Now, is it possible I could have it on the stand here? Maybe if I push the tree over a bit. Like that. Does that look good? Maybe just moss planted in there, or, you know, a small stone. Maybe that's too big. But it's a possibility. It's starting to rain really hard. I've got to get the stand out of the rain, dry it off. And I've got to get out of the rain too. So that might be it for today. It was supposed to rain the entire day today, so I'm lucky. I had a stretch in the afternoon where it wasn't raining and I could get my larch forest all done. There's still a few details to work out, but basically it's ready for the show. That's all for today. I'm Nigel Saunders. Thanks for joining me in the Bonsai Zone.